Poetry is boring. You might have heard a classmate say this with a groan after analysing the same few words over and over again. Maybe a friend said it after yet another line of T.S. Eliot has been quoted in whole school assembly. Or maybe you've said it yourself, tired of GCSE English and poems which have been annotated to death. Raise your hand if you've read a poem today, this week, this month. So loads of you have, but you have to wonder, what kind of poems are you reading? If I were to start talking about John Keats, Lord Tennyson, Percy Bysshe Shelley, I think I would see some people nodding off. These names have become synonymous with dusty tomes left untouched in the library, a far cry from the vibrancy of modern poets. So what would compel someone to pick up one of those old, obtuse poems? Well, I'm here today to tell you exactly how much merit there is to be gained from these dense and often complex poems. And no, it's not just so that you can sound more pretentious. An issue for many is that these poems are encountered for the first time in an English classroom. There, well-meaning teachers give you such mighty equipment, long lists of analytical techniques, theoretical essays, biographies on every poet. Eventually, the poem you're studying becomes so heavily annotated, you can barely make out the original words underneath your red pen. However, is it really possible that Shakespeare wrote intending for it to be studied in a secondary school classroom? Did he use all those rhymes and alliteration merely so you'd have something to comment on in your essays? Of course not. When Shakespeare picked up his quill and wrote a simile, he chose words intended to make people feel something. Love, sorrow, what it means to be human. You don't have to be able to analyse the techniques for them to have an effect upon you as you read. After all, isn't that what poetry is all about? Well, you might say, do we really need all these techniques then? I mean, surely Shakespeare could just as easily have said, "I love you," and called it a day. Why bother with such a complex version of something you could access far more simply? However, this raises the question, what do you read poetry for? Audre Lorde, poet and activist, says that poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless, so it can be thought. And yeah, sometimes a poem which has been simplified down is able to provide clarity. Other times, however, it risks reducing the complex, nameless thing which is human existence into something you might find on a tourist fridge magnet. On the other hand, poems which are more complex are better able to help you capture those nuanced emotions, which can't be summed up so easily or efficiently. Obscure words, or images, or sounds are all ways to help you achieve this, allowing you to reflect upon your own inner self. Let's take a look at an extract from a poem by John Donne. Busy old fool, unruly sun, why dost thou thus through windows and through curtains call on us? I could analyse this to death for you. Point out the anaphora, the alliteration, and don't get me started on the personification. But you don't need me to do all of this for an image of your own to begin to form in your head. When you look at these words, perhaps you're envisioning a grumpy narrator, irritated by the light of the morning. Maybe it reminds you of yourself when you're trying to have a lie-in on a Sunday. Just reading the words lets you get your own sense and come up with your own personal meaning. Of course, it's not just theoretical analysis that puts people off reading poems. Another major issue is comprehension, the importance of which is drilled into us by our English teachers. There is always that lingering fear. Am I missing out on a deeper meaning? Let's take a look at this poem by Emily Dickinson. How still the bells in steeples stand, till, swollen with the sky, they leap upon their silver feet, in frantic melody. How lovely, you might think after reading that. What a pleasant description of some bells. Then the fear kicks in. Oh God, is she really just talking about some bells? Why are they swollen then, and what's the sky supposed to be? Why are they ringing so loudly? We've all felt the fear of getting it wrong. But Emily Dickinson isn't going to rise from the grave and tell you what she meant. Instead, poetry offers a way for you to connect with yourself by choosing your own personal meaning to give to the poem. In fact, to show you how entirely you could enjoy a poem without any sort of meaning, here's a fragment from the ancient Greek poet Sappho. I know what you're thinking. It's all Greek to me. But even just listening to the sounds, hearing the words and the meter chosen, you're able to give your own sense of meaning to the words. To quote Roald Dahl's Mrs. Phelps from the wonderful Matilda, just sit back and let the words wash over you, like music. Merte moi meli merte melissa. The words are soft, soothing. Maybe to someone it reminds you of a lullaby. Maybe to someone else it seems wistful and nostalgic. Isn't the whole point of poetry that you get to choose your own personal meaning to give to the words? Walt Whitman, the beloved American poet, says that there is that in me. I do not know what it is, but I know it is in me. These poems offer a chance for you to communicate with that own deep inner self. When the meaning isn't easily summed up for you by the poet, and you must instead struggle with your own perceptions, it's then that you're better able to understand yourself because of the meanings you're choosing to give to the poem. In the end, poetry can be boring, but often that's a good thing. There, on the razor's edge of incomprehension and blind faith, you might just end up discovering yourself.